What makes poor people fat? People, what up? What's good? It's your boy 2Cents, man. As y'all see, we got another health and wellness topic, talking about some food today, man. Before we even get started, right? I mean, if I had to guess, you know, the poor communities, the poor neighborhoods don't have the top of the line, you know what I'm saying, grocery stores. So you gotta shop at McDonald's, you get your food from Burger King, that sort of thing. You're not educated on diabetes, or how to lower your blood pressure, or if your blood pressure is too high, right? So I mean, it's like a lack of a health and wellness equity education, bruh. I mean, it's a lot of things, probably. I mean, EBT, I've been blessed to never have that, but I'm pretty sure you can only use EBT at like certain stores anyway. So like the Whole Foods and that sort of thing, they probably not gonna let you really get what you need. And also, the best food is expensive as well. So I mean, that's probably gonna be it, but let's see if there's any more to it.
Why are poor people more likely to be overweight? You think it'd be the opposite, that people who have a harder time making ends meet.
Also, y'all, I mean, I'm gonna let him get his stuff off. But also, man, you can't afford, to put your son in the basketball program, or the football team, or the soccer team that he's trying to, because you know what I'm saying, you live in paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. So you can't even afford, right, the gym memberships, all of this sort of stuff, right? So it's tough, man.
Would have to cut down on food as well. It was the case throughout most of history, and for many parts of the world it still is, but not in America or other wealthy countries. The data is clear that being poor in those countries raises your odds of being overweight, especially if you're a woman. Why? Search online and you'll hear two things. Healthy food costs too much, and poor neighborhoods are fast food wastelands. But the truth is messier and a lot more uncomfortable. I'm Ken LaCourte, and here I dig into questions like this to learn and pass on to you some of the insights into how the world works. And in this case, there's a lot of contradictory information, and some of it I just don't believe, but I'll give it to you as straight as I can. In the next few minutes, we'll explore the obesity stats. What patterns do we see? We'll look at the easy answers that are commonly believed but don't tell the whole story. We'll examine the harder truths that experts don't talk enough about, and finally take a look at how politeness can be a serious...
See, and this is why I love these type of videos, man, because what I said was basically the easy answers, but we getting educated, y'all. That's what I'm here for, man.
Okay, so it's hard to miss. You can see it clearly in the Deep South, in Appalachia, in many of America's cities. Poverty and obesity often go hand in hand. In some counties, nearly half of all residents are obese. And it wasn't the case throughout most of humanity. Decades ago, being poor meant being thin. In the 1940s, if you were broke, you were likely underfed.
Right.
Now you're not, and that's a...
And I feel like this is one of the easy answer, but it's because, like, the empty calories that you're eating, right? Like the McDonald's sandwich or whatever is it's high in carbs, and there's probably not a lot of nutrients in the food. That's why you're still hungry after you're done. That's why you got to keep eating the donuts, the sodas, the chips, all that, right? And you're just getting fatter and fatter because all the cheap stuff isn't, like, you're fat and malnourished, rather than skinny and malnourished, just because of the type of food we eat, right?
Major reversal. These stats mainly come from the United States, but it's an issue that we see in most wealthy countries, especially Western ones like the UK, Canada, Australia, Western Europe. And in lower income countries, the old patterns stay the same. Obesity is higher among the wealthy. The CDC's National Health Nutrition Survey and others routinely show the same correlations. Women in the lowest income bracket are 44% more likely to be obese than those in the highest. And adults without a college degree are 35% more likely to be obese. Race adds another layer. Half of Black American adults are obese, the highest rating among any major group, largely driven by African American women. Hispanics...
But I also, right? Let's go back to this chart. What are they using to measure obesity, bro? Is it body fat percentage or is it BMI? If it's BMI, the statistics damn near could get thrown out, bro. Like, I really and I'm probably not gonna be responsible for this, but I really hope we get to the point, man, where we talking about body fat, bro. Because you can be obese, but you're an athlete. It's just because you got a lot of muscle and you weigh too much for your height. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm probably 5 to 7% body fat. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I can be like up to 30, 40 and still be considered average or underweight just because, I don't have that much mass, man. Like, what are they using for these obesity measurements, bro? Because that's going to change how I see it for sure.
The highest rating among any major group, largely driven by African American women. Hispanics follow at 45.6%, so pretty close. Whites at 41.4%, with Asian Americans far behind. And black women break the mold a little bit as well because their obesity rates are high, over 50% higher across the board, poor or wealthy. And geographically, the pattern holds as well. The poorest regions, like West Virginia, Mississippi, rural Kentucky, they top the obesity charts. All of this, unsurprisingly, has a direct overlap to serious health problems. Being overweight leads directly to high blood pressure, heart disease, adult onset diabetes, and lower life expectancy. Outside of smoking and drug or alcohol abuse, being overweight is one of the deadliest things that you can do to yourself.
I think it is that, like, isn't the number one cause of death like heart disease, like heart failure of some sort, and obviously you get that from your diet and your like sedentary lifestyle. So I mean, I think it's even worse than the drugs and the violence. So there's that, man.
And when you
I could be wrong, but man, I do a little research on the health stuff, man. But don't take everything for my word, right? Do your own research, obviously.
ask why America's poor are more overweight, a few answers come up time and time again. Healthy food costs too much. There's a lack of grocery stores. They can't afford gyms. These explanations are familiar, and they're mostly wrong. And they're also wrong in the same direction. They all lean towards the same subtext. Don't blame anyone. It sounds sympathetic, but you could also call it paternalistic, a view that paints overweight people as pure victims of circumstances. But eating is unique because while we're certainly influenced by our environment, each of us decides how many calories to put in our own bodies.
Right.
And as always, human behavior is complicated. Okay, so let's go through the common answers. The first, healthy food is too expensive. There's an element of truth to this, but only if you measure cost per calorie. $1 buys more calories of cookies than it does of broccoli, but that's not the full story because it doesn't reflect how people eat. You don't buy a meal based on its calories. You buy based on how filling and satisfying it feels. And plenty of healthy foods are cheap. So I buy most of my food from Target, right near San Francisco. So a cheap store in a very expensive region. For me, frozen chicken breasts are about $2 a piece, an extra $1 or so for a fish like salmon. I can add in fresh veggies for under $2 and a carb like brown rice for like 15 cents more. All of that combined is cheaper than a medium bag of Doritos, for instance, which would have about 3 times as many calories. And I could also eat it in one setting.
Right.
And eating at home is always cheaper than fast food. A Big Mac meal in my region costs about $13.50. The Harvard School of Public Health looked at wealthy countries overall and found that the healthiest diets cost about $1.50 more per day than the least healthy. Now, that's not an insignificant for a family on the edge, but it's a mistake to think that if I limited your money, somehow you'd be guided into heavily processed foods or sugary drinks. And ironically, the government is helping subsidize junk food. In the United States, 42 million people are on SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's 12% of the population. Now, you can't buy alcohol or deodorant with it, but you can buy candy and soft drinks.
What's this, the EBT? Basically, the link cards and all that, that's the SNAP. They just changed the name of it or something like that.
Chips. And as it turns out, about 23% of that money is spent on that kind of junk food. Now, there are proposals to stop it, but the makers of candy and soft drinks, they spend millions of dollars lobbying politicians to keep those products eligible for welfare money. So we'll see what happens. There's also blame pointed at food deserts, which means some people live far from a full-blown grocery store and closer to a quickie mart. But when researchers looked at what happens when a new grocery store opens up in a food desert, the answer is not much. A study in Philadelphia found that adding a supermarket didn't change people's weight or improve their diets. People just don't start eating vegetables because they were closer to them. And finally, there's the notion of exercise. Some say that lower income people struggle because they can't afford a gym or their neighborhoods are less walkable and have fewer parks. That falls apart on a few levels, but mainly because you just can't outrun a fork. When I'm losing weight, I literally track every calorie I eat or burn on a spreadsheet. Because losing weight's all about math. Eat more calories than you burn, you gain weight.
Right.
Eat fewer, you lose. And in the final analysis, how much you eat is always the overwhelming factor. And the math isn't even close.
Bro, damn near disprove my whole but I will say this about the food deserts, man. I actually got like, you know what I'm saying, some real world experience. Cause like I said, man, in Chicago, you know, it's like I say, it's diverse, but it's segregated. Some you know, like the whiter neighborhoods have like a lot of the grocery stores and all that. But there's like a neighborhood that's kind of close to where I live. It was a food desert, and they had an Aldi open up in there. But the Aldi was getting stole from so much that they just said F it in and just closed down the store. So how that ties back into like what he's saying, you know, I don't even think it's not that people ain't gonna go there, is that they gonna rob the store, like, and you know, that's a whole nother problem that comes with, you know, growing up in a lower class environment. But I just want to throw that in there, right?
A cheeseburger takes only a few minutes to eat, but about an hour to burn off by jogging continuously or cycling hard. Exercise is good for you, but the calories you consume determines your weight. Hey, now it's a good time to tell you that if I make any substantive mistakes in this video, I'll correct them below in the description box, and you can also find all my source notes. Okay, so let's look at some of the harder truths.
What we got?
Before I do, I want to be really clear that while poverty increases the odds of obesity, most obese Americans aren't poor. In other words, being overweight is so widespread that only about 20% of obese adults are actually considered poor. It's just that the poorer you are, the higher the odds. So I don't want to make it look like I'm pointing fingers at one small group. I'm not. I just find the turnaround fascinating. Another thing that's affecting us all is that in wealthier countries, food is getting cheaper when compared to income. Now, we've had some increases in the last few years, but looking at the United States, in 1947, people spent 23% of their income on store-bought food. That's fallen to just 7% in 2023. And finally, another macro point that affects us all is processed food that's both convenient and it tastes great. Now, processed can mean a whole lot of things, but the flip side of packaged snacks, frozen pizza, and chicken nuggets is that they pack in a lot of calories. Some people use the word addictive. To me, that's just a bridge too far. But still, why would that impact some groups more than others? A strong clue can be found by looking at immigrants, especially because they change over time. First-generation immigrants, especially from Latin America, Asia, and Africa, they often arrive lean. They eat different foods, they move more, and they stay thinner than those
come to America, now you big body, wide body.
born in America for a while. As it turns out, obesity rates among immigrants climb dramatically the longer they live here. One paper found that among new arrivals, after 15 years in the United States, their obesity rates doubled.
And I do know this, you guys, like the FDA does allow a lot of like Red 40 and all these like little drugs basically that are put into the foods we eat. A lot of that stuff isn't even allowed in these other countries, bro. So I mean that could also be a contributing factor, but I'm sure bro gonna have some information on that.
It was the same people and the same income levels, but now with new habits. And it's not just weight. Health incomes overall decline. Poor Latino immigrants entering the United States actually live longer than most Americans. But as they adopt the American diet and lifestyle, that edge disappears. Scientists call it the Latino paradox, and I did a whole video on it. Because researching these topics, I discovered so often that culture is a massive driver of behavior. We try to isolate individual causes, but it's rarely one or two individual factors. It's an interwoven fabric of how people live, how their parents lived. And it's impossible not to notice that in many communities, especially down south and some minority communities, being overweight is normal. It's often preferred. My son moved from California to Tennessee, and he clearly noticed the cultural differences. Calorically dense food, bigger portions, and more than once he was told he needed to put more meat on his bones. African American men prefer larger backsides than any other ethnic group. It was another one that I did a whole video on.
He did a video on that. It's old, so we might react to it. No, I seen it already. I can't watch it.
And something that there was weirdly a lot of studies proving it. It's not a myth. And studies also showed that black women are also twice as likely as white women to be accepting of their own bodies when they're heavy. So clearly in some communities, being thick isn't a liability. It's a
using
compliment.
Lizzo lost a little weight though, you know what I'm saying? She getting right.
And that matters. If your neighborhood, your family, and your culture, they don't see obesity as a problem, there's little internal pressure to change. And when everyone around you looks the same, you stop seeing the size as unusual. Now, I've often weighed more than I should have, and my natural eating state is to be chubby because I just like eating food. And if my friends and family and neighbors were all 30% overweight, that could certainly influence me more than a yearly conversation with a doctor or just intellectually knowing that it's dangerous. Again, food is fun, and it can also be a gesture of love. When you have less money for vacations and concerts or family outings, food can be an affordable way to create joy.
Right.
One sociologist found a low-income single mother who would splurge on $10 Starbucks and Frappuccinos, takeout pizza for herself and her daughter. The mom even delayed paying bills to do this because she saw providing those treats as a way to show love. Another mom called it her proof of motherhood. If your day is filled with saying no to other fun things, food can be an easy yes.
Right.
And that leads me to another factor that doesn't neatly fit in with the cultural answers: stress. A lot of people, including me, eat more when they're stressed out. Scientists say chronic stress can also change your metabolism as well, and studies consistently show that people living paycheck to paycheck have overall higher levels of stress. So it can definitely be a pattern and a problem. And for those wanting to lose weight, if you eat more when you're stressed and stress more when you're overweight, that's a vicious cycle. Hey, on a side note, I want to recommend a YouTube channel you might find interesting. I'm a big believer that most of you aren't the typical YouTube users. The most popular videos around, especially anything close to this space, they're so often about dunking on the other guys to make people feel better.
No, we just mix in education with foolishness over here, so don't think too highly of me, bro.
But this is a place to gain understanding about how people work, which is why I think you should check out a guy named Peter Santinello. Now, this isn't a paid thing, and I don't even know the guy, but the essence of what he does is similar to what we do here. He takes a camera and he has conversations with diverse people who tell us about how they live. He talks to people in Appalachia or the Chicano part of East LA. He spent time with Hasidic Jews at their Sabbath dinners and also with gang members in inner cities. And he listens more than he talks. Anyhow, he helped inspire me to create this channel, and you might find something worthwhile there as well. There's a link below. Okay, back to obesity and the problem of politeness. It's a problem when society can be too worried about body shaming or making people feel bad. It allowed fat activists to grow well beyond body positivity.
And we haven't done any reactions to these type of videos, but a lot of these fat fluencers die off. You know what I'm saying? So the whole like body positivity movement is just ultimately, it's negative, bro. Positivity is negative. How does that work? Because we're not supposed to be that big.
Into a movement, often with deadly advice, that became mainstream enough to influence media, medicine, and education. We saw obese people in sports magazines, or people being told this is healthy when it clearly wasn't. We're told that they're strong, they're fit. Even doctors are avoiding the word obese to not offend patients. And medical schools, they're bending science to find metabolically healthy obesity. A 2018 study found that only 40% of UK doctors would bring up the topic of weight loss with obese patients. That's medical malpractice. I mean, it certainly protects feelings, but it doesn't protect bodies or help people live longer. Contrast that to smoking. How did we dramatically cut cigarette use? Society didn't tell smokers they were victims of their environment. It told them they were going to die. The government taxed the heck out of cigarettes, banned them in restaurants and planes and offices. There were brutal TV ads showing blackened lungs and people talking through holes in their throats. Society made smoking difficult and uncool because here's an uncomfortable truth. Part of what helped beat smoking was shame. Not cruelty, but cultural disapproval. We made it clear that lighting up around other people was selfish and dangerous to everyone. That stigma helped people quit. But with obesity, we do the opposite. We bend over backwards not to hurt anyone's feelings. And public health messaging is soft, polite, and
You go, girl.
often vague. They're simply too afraid to say that obesity is harming people and it's shortening their lives. So, why are poor people more likely to be overweight? It likely has a lot more to do with culture than money, although a lot of other factors like stress and environment certainly play a role too. Like almost all of the topics I research here, there's no simple, easy answer because the strands of behavior are interwoven into our lives. They're beliefs, behaviors, and values that are passed down from generation to generation, and they're not easily changed. So I touched on a video I produced about the fat acceptance movement, and it kind of pissed me off. I mean, not really at the act of it.
We might gotta check that out. We probably will, to be honest. But shout outs to Ken LaCourte, man. Great video right here, bro. Hope y'all enjoyed it. As always, man, it's your boy 2Centz. Say it with me. TCZ. We out.